This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is Len Sierra moderating the AnCan High Risk Recurrent Advanced Prostate Cancer video chat for December 27, 2022. First, we want to acknowledge our sponsors, Pfizer, Bayer, Novartis, Myovant, J&J, and Myriad. And once again, I'll wish everyone a happy new year. Let's hope 2023 brings good news for all of us. And let me start with Jim Kubat.
Hey, thanks, Len, and happy holidays and happy new year to everybody. I just had a question regarding a situation that I've come up against. I had just a little quick background. I had a radical prostatectomy in 2017. I then had a recurrence and had radiation treatment of my pelvis in 1819. And a year ago, I discovered I had 3 large kidney stones in my left kidney. I had 2 lithotripsies to remove the stones, the second of which damaged my left ureter. So, to make a long story short, I'm talking to a surgeon in Massachusetts about ureteral reconstruction, and he said there's a reduced chance of success because of the fact that I had the radiation, and radiation damages tissue. So, Len, first of all, I want to say that I've been reading that article that you sent, which is extremely helpful and informative. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
My question to the group is for those of you who have had radiation of the pelvis for your cancer, have any of you had post-radiation surgical needs for non-cancerous conditions? In my case, it's a blockage that is preventing my left kidney from draining. I've already lost functioning in the left kidney, and I have a surgeon who's talking to me about this reconstructive surgery. A complication recently is that they noticed when they were doing some radio CAT scans, they noticed a lump at the top of my bladder. So I'm going in for a biopsy of that in January. And then also the surgeon's going to try to put a stent, bladder, ureter, and into the kidney to try to drain the kidney, and then wait to see if with the stent, if the kidney will still function to a certain extent to pass the urine. As of now, I only have 7% function in that kidney, so we don't know how that will go. But aside from the biopsy and the lump, does anyone have any experience with having surgery on your irradiated tissue? And if so, how did that go? What was the healing process like? Did it fully heal? How long did it take? Were there sutures involved? Did the sutures adhere to the irradiated tissue? Did you have any problems at all that you could offer?
Yeah, I was kind of afraid of that. I think it's unusual to have surgery on a radiated tissue or organ. And it
Jim
looks like
Marshall,
no one.
Jim Marshall has a hand up, Len.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry about that. I was clicking around and I think I clicked the hand.
Oh, okay. No pearls of wisdom. Okay.
I understand that it might not be a very common situation. It's unfortunate that these stones developed, but yeah, I just I'm just fishing around to see it's at some point if the kidney is dead, then he suggests he's not going to bother with the reconstruction. But if there's any portion of the kidney that can function, that will be a conversation that the surgeon and I will have down the road. And I'm just trying to find as much perspective on that as possible. It's a classic dilemma. I'm kind of screwed if I do and screwed if I don't. So I was just wondering. But thanks. If anybody has
So,
additional comments, let me know in the chat box.
so Jim, the biggest, the concern I have is the results of that biopsy from the mass that they see in the bladder.
Yeah.
And that is because we've had experience recently with a couple of people with urothelial bladder cancer.
Yeah.
One lower tract and one, actually two now upper tract. Because I just heard of somebody else this week, a very, very old friend of mine, who's having to have part of the ureter and the and kidney removed. And some of that comes from, or can come from, blockages, because if the kidney doesn't get good flow, then it can get damaged pretty quickly. So I I think the first thing, the most important thing to do is to biopsy that mass and see what it is, and hopefully it'll come back benign. But if not, then come back to us and we'll talk some more.
Yeah. And thanks, Rick. Yeah, that's absolutely the plan. I'm moving forward with the surgeon. I definitely want to get that biopsied and find out what that's about. So
Yeah.
it's a classic, one step at a time situation. I'll have to deal with that first. If it's benign, then I'm back to square one. If not, then that's a whole different discussion. I'll certainly be talking to all of you about that as well. But thanks for the time. I appreciate it. I'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question while we're on the subject? I mean, I hear of a lot of guys struggling with kidney stones, and usually the common thing is it's diet related. Too much processed food, too much salt, calcium bill. I don't know. Is the thinking that it's more we have a genetic proclivity to those kind of things? I'm not sure what the current thinking is in driving kidney stones and how to
So
prevent them.
I think that, first of all, we actually have a really good guy that specializes in kidney stones at Duke. And I just recently referred him for one of our advisory board members. And I know a little bit about it. I have a sister who has chronic kidney stones. She just had a lithotripsy last week that wasn't successful, and she's been dealing with them since the 1980s, and I've had my share of kidney stones. Now, in my own case, I think it's because I have a proclivity to have too much calcium in my blood. So my serum calcium levels are always high, and as a result of that, I have stones. There were calcium deposits they could see in my prostate, and that happens quite often. So I don't think it's so much. I mean, it may be influenced by what you eat, but I also think there's a factor in how much calcium you have in your blood. Or I mean, I think I leach calcium from my bones. My bones are soft as well. And so I've got calcium going into the blood, and then when the calcium goes into the blood, it deposits. So I think that is a factor. Any other kidney stone sufferers in this group?
Well, I mean, I think, Rick, I mean, it's not just calcium. I mean, the thing is when you get above the solubility product of calcium phosphate, that's when it starts to precipitate, and that's what makes a kidney stone. So the whole point is to drink tons of fluids to keep that and regulate your pH to an acidic pH so that they don't solubilize,
Right.
so that they can go into solution and get rid of them. I mean, I can only tell you it's no fun to have a kidney stone.
Better believe it.
Yeah.
Better believe it.
And it is
Climbing up.
solitary. And you have to be careful. You have to be careful of what you eat and drink.
How did the kidney stone pain compare to what you just went through with your with your
Oh,
hips,
kidney
etc.?
stone is much worse.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just getting a relative because kidney stone I understand. I do understand kidney stone.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that people who were taking high doses of vitamin C were having problems with kidney stones. Does anybody recall that?
Mm-mm. Sounds like a good one though.
Yeah.
There's lots of different types of kidney stones, and each of them
Yeah.
has different causes. So
Yeah.
they're not all
Yeah.
calcium.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the most are calcium though, Dr. John. I think that's the most common,
I
I should
bet you're
say.
right. Yeah.
Um, Mine certainly were calcium based. I know my sisters are too. Um, but I wouldn't wish kidney stones on anybody.
Well, that's not
So
true.
You have
we, don't,
some people,
we,
you have
we don't
somebody
go
you'd
there
wish
in
kidney
this
stones.
forum. We don't go there in this forum. Remember,
Maybe
out of
Putin.
respect, out of respect to our dear beloved Jake, we don't go. We don't go there in this forum.
Okay,
Well,
Jim.
I've always that kidney stone in a male is equivalent to a woman giving birth. Whether it's true
Yeah,
or not, I don't know. I've had a couple of kidney stones, and yeah, it put me right down.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You learn what climbing the walls means. Yeah.
Okay, Jim, Kuba, thank you very much. At least you have some commiseration here with the guys who also had kidney stones.
Thanks.
Uh, okay, keep us posted. And let's go to Joel Blanchette, who was one of the first ones to join tonight. Go ahead, Joel.
Yes, I was eating a lot of mushrooms for the past 3, 4 months because a guy in my prostate cancer support group said that there was some research on mushrooms that it was good to um, sort of abate prostate cancer. So I probably overdid it. I'm sure I did. And so when Dr. E gave me a blood test, a complete 5, 6 page blood test, in November, my phosphorus was high. So the only thing I could imagine was that I ate too many mushrooms. So I a blood test in December 21st, and my phosphorus, instead of being above the upper range, it's now at the upper range. So that's come down. So I'm probably am correct about the mushrooms. I did research it online, and mushrooms do create a lot of phosphorus. The next thing is that while I was taking the blood test, I said, well, maybe.
Hold on, hold on. Just for people to know, it when they say mushrooms can help, it's not just any mushrooms. You have to do the research and you have to find which type of mushroom, and sometimes those mushrooms are only available in extract form. So I don't know that eating white button mushrooms from the supermarket is going to do the trick. Um, there's a lot of literature on on mushrooms for cancer, and there is some on prostate cancer too. I think I'll look in a second. I may have something, but one thing that people talk about frequently is turkey tail, but you can't eat turkey tail. I've actually foraged for turkey tail, and it's kind of a growth on the side of the bark of certain trees, and they make a tea into it or they grind it down. I don't know which. I know that one person who's published, one very reputable person who's published on turkey tail is Don Abrams, who runs the OSHA Integrative Cancer Medical Center at UCSF, and I don't think he still is, he was chief oncologist at SF General. But it's just not any type of mushroom, Joel.
Okay. I even bought some ground turkey tail, but I ended up not eating it yet because I was eating the white button mushrooms, and I liked them so much I kept eating them. So I stopped eating them about a month ago. So while taking a blood test, I figured, well, I might as well take my PSA. So I got my PSA also, and it was 0.22, down from 0.66 of a month ago. So it's headed in the right direction. Dr. E predicted that my PSA would be at undetectable in January. She got in touch with me today through my chart and said my next appointment with her teleconference will be on January 12, and I need to take another battery of blood tests on 9 January through Quest. So I'll have some more to say after that. But right now, that's about it for me.
Joel, she put you on darolutamide, is that right?
Yes, I'm currently started taking Orgovix on 20 September and darolutamide on 29 October. So I've been on it for a couple of months now, and no effects from either drug that I can tell.
Good. And the PSA was what? Your latest PSA?
0.22,
0.22.
and we started out at 13.38 when we started the process of Orgovix and darolutamide.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Any questions for Joel from the gents?
No side effects, Joel?
No side effects whatsoever. I can't discern any. PSA is headed down, but I've had no side effects. I was in favor of getting darolutamide, and I happened to mesh with Dr. E, who was convinced that's what I should be taking also. So I thank Rick for that before, but I want to thank him again for sending me to the correct doctor.
I think we have to thank the doctor more than we have to thank me. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm so glad, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more later, but I'm so glad that a lot of you who hadn't had the opportunity to see Dr. E in action got to experience that last week. And if you didn't, then there is a recording. And I referenced it in the reminder this week, and we can put it in the chat window shortly.
So, Joel, what was your testosterone levels?
Testosterone was started out at 253, and then after 1 month of Orgovix, it was less than 10. And when Dr. E checked my blood in November, it was less than 5.
Yeah, it really hammers the testosterone pretty quick.
Very quick, yes.
I'm just going to I just putting in the chat window, first of all, a really nice reference on turkey tail mushrooms from Dr. Abrams. So let me put that in first, and then I'll put if you didn't see it, and a huge shout out, not just big, huge shout out to Ben Nathanson for creating that post on Dr. E, taking Dr. E's recording and putting it into a post and adding the slides and everything else that he did. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Is it cold in Jersey? I see you got your woolly hat on. What's going? No heating? The heating go off in Jersey? Oh.
He's
You're muted,
saving
Ben.
he's saving on heating oil.
Yeah, he's saving on.
All right.
You're muted.
Wait, oh, Len, before we get off the topic, I just have
Yeah.
to tell my 30-second turkey tail mushroom nightmare story.
Oh.
I was at a wedding a couple of months ago in Tucson, and I got buttonholed and cornered and trapped by some aunt who had survived breast cancer, and she heard that I had cancer. She wouldn't let me go for 30 minutes talking to me about turkey tail mushrooms. Would not let me go. I couldn't visit anybody. I couldn't drink anything. She had me completely nailed, and we're out in the hot sun. And finally, the only way I could get away from her was that I had to promise her I would take some turkey tail mushrooms. And I haven't done it yet. So before I die, I have to at least have one dose, or I'll go to hell when I die as a Catholic.
You'll be waiting for you.
She'll be waiting for me, is right, yeah.
I bought mine from Amazon. They cost about $50 for one bag, but they can be bought a lot cheaper from other sources. I know Thrive Market which is a market online. They ship to all states. They sell for about in the mid-20s someplace.
Yeah, I mean there is evidence. You'll read that reference, and if I see anything else, I'll put it in. And I'm just right now putting in the Dr. E recording reference. So there you go. All right, I'll see what else I got on turkey tail and any other mushrooms. But there's others too. But turkey tail's the one that comes to mind. But there are other mushrooms, and like with most complementary, it may help. Hopefully, it cannot hurt. But there ain't no guarantees. So, and sometimes, if you eat too much and you overdo it, it may not be a good thing. So you got to be careful.
All right. So just a heads up for you, Dr. John, I'm going to tell Jimmy Greenfield to talk to you about turkey tail mushrooms when you have lunch with him tomorrow.
Oh my God, no.
Okay, let's go to Cliff Collins. And Cliff, maybe I, if no one else, could use a quick refresher on your situation. I remember you had quite a lot going on.
Hi, everyone. I am in my eternal search for something to abate my hot flashes, which I have numerous severe hot flashes. Of course, I tried the Ember wave, and it's not very effective. But lately, I've tried the acupuncture, which I have 3 in each ear currently for the next 5 days, and I accidentally scratched them, and it doesn't feel well. But I think I'm getting a breakthrough. I haven't
Yes.
had one since. I use it in conjunction with the Ember wave, and I think we may be on to something. So that's a good thing. On another note, I did try turkey tail mushrooms, and it's okay. I just prefer not to spend money on things that really aren't scientifically tested to be absolutes. So I don't adhere to it, and I don't advocate for it. But back to my situation, my PSA never ever registered above 1. throughout the whole time that I've been checking it for the last 15 years since I had a Turk back in 2015, and so my primary care provider um, noticed on some X-rays that had taken. I get a physical every year, and I go there regularly. Noted that I had a growth in my abdomen, and so she sent me to a vascular surgeon, and they did a needle biopsy, and it was inconclusive. And but they did think once they did the needle biopsy, since they knew the mass was a lymph node, they thought it was lymphoma. And so they said, well, we're going to turn you over into urologist, surgeon, and do a surgical procedure to take out the lymph node. And he sent it off to the pathologist, and the pathologist came back and said it's prostate cancer. Well, the surgeon said that that can't possibly be. There are no signs of that. His PSA is almost negligible, and so he told the pathologist to redo the test, and it came back again, prostate cancer. And of course, by that time, it's in your lymph nodes, it's metastasized. So it was in my lymph node here and one in my back. And it, of course, did further tests, and cancer in my bones was negative. Cancer in my brain was negative. They did another biopsy because they thought that, I guess they did a PSMA test, and they found another lymph node in my neck here, and they found it to be positive for prostate cancer. So they just put me on ADT, and that's about it. Oh, I had radiation treatment. Um, I had 28 sessions of radiation, and it went well. I was having some problems with my bowels after that, seriously problems, and so I don't know if anybody else had any bowel problems after their radiation, but I'd like to know if you had, or if it was just something that I had. I don't know, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Go ahead, David Meslin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I had colitis since I was 20 years old, and when I went through the radiation, it really burned my rectum pretty bad, and so it increased my colitis, and as of recently, in the last week or so, I've had a real flare up. I mean, going to the bathroom like 20 times a day.
Yeah, I can
And
identify.
that's been rough. So it's proctitis, and I actually just had talked to my gastroenterologist 2 days ago, and she's putting me on some different meds, and I did a steroid pack, and today it's like I'm like back again. I'm feeling much better. But it's food and a flare up, and it's something we have to live with because the damage is done.
Yeah,
And
I had a normal bowel movement all my life, and yeah, like I can identify it. Going to the bathroom 10 times is crazy. It's crazy.
yeah, but there's ways around it to relieve the inflammation, and it's also called proctitis. But in the rectum, so I'm going to start this special suppository that the compound pharmacy here is going to make up for me. I don't even know what's in it yet. I'll find out. So I'm like all over this thing at the moment. But food is a big problem. You got to eat really plain foods, no acidic anything, no fresh salads. No, you got to really go on a real plain, bland diet for a while, and I bet you'll calm down there, Cliff.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that advice, because this holiday season has wreaked havoc on my digestive system.
Yeah, alcohol is real bad. Alcohol is like throwing poison in there.
Yeah, I've never drank, and never will, so that's not really a problem for me. Currently, I didn't.
Okay.
I left out. Currently, I'm on a study called Stampede, and
Yeah, you talked about that.
yeah, so that's pretty much it for me.
Okay.
Cliff, I asked a question a week or so ago when you
Uh-huh.
first introduced yourself, and it kind of got missed. But I just wonder, you're a Gleason 9, correct? That's
That's
your
correct. That's correct.
Yeah. When they did your TERP in 2015, did they send the tissue in for uh, for biopsy? Did they see anything on that?
No, they did send it in, and there was nothing.
Interesting. Okay. It just seems, well, I mean, that's a number of years, so it could not
Yeah.
show up. I mean, I can understand that, but I was just wondering what, I thought it was common practice to send TERP tissue in for pathology.
Yeah. My PSA, and I've checked it every year, and even sometimes even every 6 months, and it never went up to 1. It went up to 1 at the latter end when they found it, and actually it went up to 3 when they started the procedures on me. But that's after the fact. But before then, it was almost insignificant.
Okay.
That's why we're all so very interested in you getting some genetic testing on that tumor tissue,
Yeah.
because you have such an unusual situation. There are many of us here whose PSAs never went above like 4 or 5 or 6, but I can't remember anybody who's never went above even 1,
Yeah.
and yet was a Gleason 9. So there's something that we would like to
Yeah.
know about this tumor.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I
Some,
was thinking it because I have several friends I grew up with, and almost all of them I had prostate cancer, or either one's in a watch situation, the other one had the cancer. They caught it early. They, of course, they took out his prostate, and another friend of mine died. He died quickly. So I was always aware of it. My best friend had it, and he was always talking about his procedure. So I don't know.
so Cliff, I had never had a PSA above 1 or 1.2. But I had a TERP because I had a total urinary blockage,
Yeah.
and they tested it, and I had a Gleason 9.
Wow.
And the doctor couldn't believe it because I had no PSA. But I've since learned that there's a variation where the PSA never comes up, but you can have
Right.
serious cancer. But I did have the genetic testing, both kinds, and there's nothing in me to say that there'd be any cancer.
Yeah. I had the genetic testing,
Oh,
and like you, it was nothing to say that history proved nothing. So I don't know.
thanks, Mark, for speaking up. That's just what I was talking about. So we do have someone
Yeah.
like that.
And then, I know another situation of a gent in a very similar situation to Dr. Jack. In fact, Dr. Jack knows this gent, and his PSA never got over 1, and his prostate, he had an RP, and the pathology came back 4+4. His RP was in 2009, and he's in a situation a bit like Dr. Jack. I mean, it's now gone up to around 0.4, and he's probably thinking of getting some treatment. But again, but interestingly, because a lot of times it is more aggressive, but his does seem to be regular common or garden. He just doesn't make PSA. So whilst I have the floor, there's more stuff in there. There is something on white button mushroom, so I stand corrected, General. I found something on white button mushrooms, not in excess. And I put another thing in from 2012. I'm cleaning out all of my button mushroom references for you in there. And I did want to say to Cliff that look at these, Cliff. They're in the chat window. You can just click on the link and they'll open up, because these are all studies that have some clinical background. I mean, there are studies for turkey tail.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to speak to the validity, and they may be questionable studies, but they are studies, and they are referenced in pretty good peer-reviewed studies. So that it's not just It's not snake oil. Oh, and Dr. Jack, what are you showing us? Speak up, Dr. Jack. Put your microphone on.
All right. Let me tell you about this stuff that was recommended to me. A friend of mine had seen a consultant out in Washington for his Merkel cell, and it was pretty frightening. Because, as you know, it's a very lethal, potentially lethal cancer. And the Dr. Nyhan out in Washington highly recommended this host defense mushroom, My Community, a comprehensive immune support, mixed mushrooms. You can buy it on Amazon. And this is a very reputable man who I certainly have read about as being trustworthy. So I'm just showing it to you right now. What happened to my camera? Here it is. All right.
But
It's
Jack,
all
really, is there any evidence that this stuff works?
evidence. I don't know about
Yeah.
evidence, but this is a man who's reputable, who
Yeah, but
everybody
I
can
mean,
trust.
so was
Herb,
you know,
there are
yeah.
three things in there. Look at them, read them, check the
Three.
references, and then come back and tell us that the
Okay.
studies weren't good. So the answer is yes, there is.
I
may
don't
not
know. I
agree,
mean, I'd
but
like to
yes,
see the
there is.
evidence.
Well,
All right.
read the links. That's why I put the links in.
Hmm.
Okay, let's not say there's
Okay,
no
got it.
evidence. There's links in there.
Mhm.
All right. I'm just throwing it
Jack,
out
could
there
you
for you to.
could you post the product so we can in the chat?
What I do, I just type it up in the chat box. Is that how it works? I've
Yeah.
never done
Yes.
that before. Okay.
Well,
All
you'll
right.
be, once you figure out that chat box, Dr. Jack, you're going to be dangerous, man.
I'll chat away. Okay.
Yeah, I'll read the research on these mushrooms, but as a researcher myself, I'm a PhD. Uh, I really like to go in depth when I look at these studies, and I will look at them. But right now, I'm all peeled up. I got enough abiraterone, Effexor, prednisone, vitamin D. I'm pretty much where I want to be right now.
Good.
Okay.
All right, Cliff, thank you. By the way, Cliff, you said you had frequent bowel movements, but do you have blood in your bowel movement?
No blood.
Oh, then that doesn't sound like proctitis. Usually with radiation proctitis, you have blood
Yeah, I
in
think
the.
I initially had some right after, but I haven't had any since. But I still have frequent bowel movements.
Mucus? You have any mucus?
Yes.
The diarrhea, this is John, the diarrhea that I got during my radiation treatment stopped right after I finished my radiation treatments. That's what puzzles me about yours.
Yeah, mine has not stopped, and I finished radiation back in April, and it stopped and then started again. Like you said, with food, with different foods, I think it aggravates it and starts again. So yeah.
My brother had radiation proctitis 1 year after or even a year and a half after his radiation stopped, and it cleared up with treatment. It hasn't come back again yet for a couple of years.
So Len and I have both been wrestling with radiation proctitis for many, many years. Me longer than Len, because my radiation was back in 2008, Cliff. And I mean, I still have it now. It's just that it doesn't bother me that much. Sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's better. I think David's advice, be careful what you eat and find out what sets you off. But don't be surprised if you're living with this for a long, long time. One thing you should know if you have radiation proctitis, that my radiation oncologist prevented me from getting a colonoscopy for about 7 years. After about 3 or 4 years, he said, you can get a sigmoidoscopy. Still don't want you to get a colonoscopy because he was very concerned about a fistula.
Oh.
And then after, I think 2015 or 16, I got a colonoscopy. 2016 or 17, I got a colonoscopy. It was clear, but you have to be careful if you've got issues, because a colonoscopy can break the wall.
Yeah, thank you for that information because I'm scheduled to do a colonoscopy next year, and I will advise my physician that about my condition
Well,
right now.
check with your radiation oncologist first and
Yeah.
ask him if he's happy for you to go ahead, especially if you've got issues. And if you've got those issues, keep your radiation oncologist apprised. That's what I did with Dr. Roach.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, which is on that topic. After my third PSMA PET scan, the day after, I started getting darker stools and very soft diarrhea, sort of very sticky diarrhea. And that last, so the doctor put me on Imodium and also on a line. And so I've been taking that up until about 2 weeks ago. And then I got some food poisoning at a local restaurant here in Miami's. I ate some bad clams and I was sick for 2 days. And since then, I haven't had the problem after I recovered. So I don't know what's going on, but what kind of doctor diagnoses radiation proctitis?
A GI doctor. The same guy
Okay.
that does the colonoscopy.
Oh, okay. Because I'm due for a colonoscopy in 2022, and it's almost over, and I haven't taken one yet. But now that Rick said what he said, maybe I shouldn't be taking a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
I think the advice is speak to your rad-onc and also ask Dr. E what she for her advice on this one, but just check in first
Good point.
before.
Good point. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Black stools can also is a sign of blood in your stools.
Blood, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But after my food poisoning, my stools are nice and brown. They're not dark anymore.
See, you might have actually changed your gut bacteria composition. There's a lot of evidence gut microbiome can influence a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I stopped taking the Imodium. The only thing I'm taking now is a line.
Okay, can we move on now to Neil Sundstrom? Is Neil still with us? I don't see him.
Yes, he is.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Ah, there he is. Okay. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, hi. And Rick, thanks. I've been back and forth with Rick a bit here, and I really appreciate the advice as always. So just a little background. I had a radical prostatectomy in 2013. I had a Gleason score of 7. It was found by my doctor, not from the PSA, which was rising a bit, but not above 3 or 4. But it rose over a couple of years. So that was in October 21st, 2013. I had the surgery here with Dr. Carroll in San Francisco at UCSF. And everything was fine, undetectable until about beginning of 2021. And it's still very low, but has been rising. And in fact, I got quite a jump I get now every 3 months. So I got quite a jump between 0.08 and up to 0.15 within 3 months, which was taken in September. So I actually have the urologist that I've been going to, and also been seeing Dr. Carroll since the surgery, and there's a little bit of differing between the two of their way that they approach this. My urologist is suggesting that I should go for radiation immediately, and his statement was that there's better outcomes as you get this earlier. And Dr. Carroll is asking that I wait till it's 0.2 and then have a PMSA scan and see if there's other, I assume, other places in my body that this might have. I'm assuming that it's a full body scan, which I'm not sure. But then that would probably show visibility into where it is specifically, and then maybe that's different treatment. And that's the advice that obviously Rick has been going with as well. So I'm in that kind of situation right now. I don't want to jump too quickly. I want to make sure that we get the right outcome here. But any other thoughts or comments on that would be appreciated.
Neil, I know we used to say on this forum that you should wait till your PSA is at least 0.5, but I'm thinking that oncologists are changing their view on this, and Dr. O, well, of course, he moved on now to Prostate Cancer Foundation Chief Medical Officer, but he was my oncologist, and he told me he was doing serial PSMAs at 0.2, starting at 0.2. And now I'm down here in Florida, and the oncologist I see here is recommending the same early PSA of 0.2 when they start doing PSMA scanning.
Right.
So I don't know if this is a trend, but these are both Dana-Farber trained.
That's exactly what Dr. Carroll is suggesting is 0.2, and I'm just below that, and so I think that it's probably prudent for me to get another blood test in the next couple of months and see if it hits that or stays here. But anything underneath that, I mean, again, my urologist here has suggested I go see a radiologist and get this started even at 0.15.
Well, so a couple of things. I mean, first of all, 0.2 is fine, but I've got to stretch my memory a little bit, but I think the trial, which one was it? I always get them confused. Osprey or Falcon, whichever one it was for the recurrent, showed that you only get less than 40% show up at under 0.2. So if you want greater certainty, you need to wait. So the problem with getting it at that lower level is that you don't have anywhere near as much certainty on the reliability of the scan. It could be there and it may not have picked it up. One of the guys here may remember the numbers better. But one of the reasons I really wanted you to come on was to hear from Dr. Jack, because he's in a similar situation. Go on, Jack, tell him.
Yeah, this story is so familiar. The way you're describing it is exactly what happened with me. I had 15 years out, and then I started to reoccur very slowly over time. And from the outset at Sloan Kettering, they wanted to do immediate radiation as soon as I became detectable and hormone deprivation. They wanted to do both. At Sloan Kettering, they said the lower the better. We can really nip it in the bud, have curative intent. On the other hand, Scardino slowed me down, said, slow down, take it easy. Let's just watch. Let's just, like Dr. Carroll, let's see if you can get to a certain point. This is before PSMA me. I went out and got a choline scan with Dr. when I was at 0.13 and they couldn't find anything. He said, come back when it's 0.3 to 0.5. And I never came back. What happened instead, I reached 0.2 and on 2 separate occasions over a 6-month period. And then I was eligible for a very new PSMA scan that was just done, just opened up on the East Coast. It was in California, but I didn't fly out to California. I stayed on the East Coast. Sloan Kettering did it April 1st, 2021. Nothing lit up at all. And so, but they saw some nodules in my lung and some possible things in my bone, and that put everything on hold for a year because they were investigating the possibility that there was something outside of the prostatic bed and pelvic bed and prostatic fossa. So I had all that investigation. In the meantime, my PSA kept rising, and here I am at this point after all that investigation, a year later, with a PSMA scan that didn't show anything, but the axonal scan possibly showed something. It's being looked into by Peter Carroll's group, Tom Hope, right now, and I'll get the results later this week or tomorrow. However, I'm wondering in retrospect whether it would have hurt me or helped me to start radiation and hormone deprivation back then, in view of the fact that now they're considering that I may have it in my lung, nodule, not nodule, but a lymph node in my lung, and then I would have suffered needlessly with all this radiation and hormone deprivation back then. And if it was outside of the prostate, it's such a gamble. If you go ahead and radiate and get hormone deprivation, they say, what do they say, 33, 40% maybe it's in the pelvic bed and the prostate, or maybe the other chances 2/3 are outside. I don't know. It's a gamble, and you have to decide yourself. I trust Dr. Carroll as I trusted Dr. Scardino to guide me, and that's why I have Carroll as mission control right now, and I have an oncologist, two oncologists diametrically opposed in how to approach the situation. Sounds like your two urologists are thinking along the same lines. I would go with Dr. Carroll's approach. Wait for the PSA to hit 0.2 on 2 occasions over 6 months, and go ahead and get a PSMA scan and see if I have anything outside. If you have nothing outside, then you can either choose to wait a little longer to find something in the pelvic bed and radiate it with certainty, or go ahead and gamble on it and go for the curative intent, which I wish I had an opportunity to do, but I don't have that opportunity now. I'm up to 1.15 with a 5-month doubling time. So that's all I have to say, but that's my journey so far.
Well, that's very helpful. That's very helpful. That's yeah, that's I just got this news like a couple of days ago, so as Rick knows, so I'm kind of going back and forth on it. I think Dr. Carroll is in the control center, as you indicated, and so I'm kind of slowing it down. I want to slow it down. I don't want to jump too quickly, but I am concerned if it's outside of the pelvic region and pelvic area, then that's problematic. I did have Dr. Carroll did have me go to get a transrectal ultrasound, which found nothing.
Dr.
Yeah,
Shinohara?
Shinohara, yeah, who did my original biopsy in 2013. So there's nothing there, but frankly, I didn't think there was going to be anything there, and I didn't expect to see anything, and I don't think they did either, but at this lower rate. But I am concerned if it is outside of the pelvic region, then going in and doing it in the pelvis today is just going to exacerbate the situation. I'll have to go back again for other radiation. So if I wait a little bit and get that scan and it shows that it's different places, then perhaps the single treatment could be done in a single time. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the process, but that's kind of my thinking right now.
Well, good luck.
Until somebody does a comparative study where they look at the long-term outcome of people like you guys, half of which get one treatment, half get the other, it's going to be a little bit of guesswork. I mean, really, when you think about it, both of these doctors are right. They're both, one is basing his conclusion of early treatment equals delayed recurrence on pretty good research, and the others, PET scans are new. The other one is making an excellent judgment on the potential use of PET scans. It's a tough situation because everybody's right, and I guess you're going to sort of have to go with gut reaction, or who do you trust, right?
Peter, do you want to comment on this, Peter Kafka?
No, I just think I think it's just really it's speculation at this point. I I don't know where the line is for recurrence. I think maybe in our advanced group, we need to think about that. Is it just, a very small possibility, or is it distinct? I mean, we've never really addressed that
I,
subject.
I think the conventional wisdom is if it's a prostatectomy and you have a PSA rising like Neil has, that's considered recurrence. If it's a
Correct.
radiation, it's not considered recurrence. But anybody disagree with that?
No, I mean, I think the protocol is 3 successive increases after a prostatectomy. I think the bigger issue is not so much defining recurrence. The bigger issue is if there is recurrence, at what point do you treat? Now, the old wisdom was definitely the earlier the better, and even at UCSF, um, I met Neil back in 2012 or 13 through a very dear friend, a mutual friend, Eric, and he had I think 4+4, and they decided he needed adjuvant therapy, and he did it right away. They didn't wait. Now there's research that says makes no difference if you do it right away or you wait 8 months. Um, the results are no different. And I think that over the past 12, 14, 15 years or so, we're more willing, we don't feel that the adverse effects are going to produce an inferior result if you wait. We don't believe there's going to be an inferior result. We don't believe there are going to be more adverse events if you wait or if you go in right away. And I think that's the newer thinking. And now we have the PSMA scans, which of course we didn't have even widely used 5 years ago, which allow us to see things we could never see back in 2010. So what bothers me, and one of the concerns I have with Eric, with Neil's urologist, is that urologist is sort of made a comment that kind of discounts the research and says my experience is get in early and do it. And I think there is good research that says you can wait and there is no harm. And the benefit, as I've said to Neil, and the benefit, I mean, I've been working with Neil, as I said, since the diagnosis. The benefit is that the more information we have as to where that cancer has arisen, the better we can treat it. And maybe just hormone therapy and radiating the pelvic girdle, it's possible that might not do the job. It's possible we might need to do something different. And if we can wait a little bit and find out exactly where the cancer is, maybe we give a little bit more, maybe we do SBRT to where we actually see the cancer, and then maybe we can do a different dose for the pelvic girdle. But we can balance that. The other question that you just asked me in the last email, Neil, where should you go? For me, I'd go to a center of excellence. If I was in the Bay Area, even if it was a little less convenient, I would go to a UCSF, or I'd have UCSF designing my radiation if you wanted to get it more locally. But I don't think it's worth messing around with that.
Yeah,
I
well,
think you go
and I
to the
appreciate
best.
that. Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think Dr. Carroll is, as Jack said earlier, he's kind of the control center, and I intend to look at all angles, and I intend to have him recommend a radiologist. What I'm, and I think I intend to get more PSA, fine PSA blood tests in more quickly than every 3 months, maybe
Oh
every 2
yeah.
months, maybe do it again next month. Because I have had those 3 consecutive rises, as you saw on the chart that I sent over. It went from it went from 0.4 to 0.8 to 0.4
0.04.
0.04, sorry, 0.04, 0.04 to 0.06 to 0.08 to 0.15, within the last year. So I think that, that qualifies it for, yes, there's something there. But I think that a more rapid blood tests will help me understand how quickly it's going, and then really get in to the right at 0.2. I think that's probably the number that PSMA scan will be most effective, or effective anyway. And so I'm kind of waiting to do that. What do you, Jack? What do you think?
I'm just afraid, as Rick said before, the odds of it lighting up when you hit the criteria of 0.2 over a 6-month period twice in a row, then eligible for a PSMA scan, nothing may light up. That's what happened to me and so many other people I know. And some people are lucky, like the fellow that we know, Steve, out in California. He was lucky. He lit up at a very low levels, and they know exactly where it is. So he's a candidate if he chooses to go ahead and have his pelvis radiated or his prostatic bed. I wasn't that lucky. I didn't get that kind of result. Otherwise, I would have gone through IMRT and androgen deprivation early, but I didn't have that luck. So I'm not sure. Maybe you'll get lucky, and maybe when you hit 0.2, 0.25, 0.3, maybe then you'll be able to get a PSMA avid showing on your scan. But I think that's only 33% or something like that. I forgot the number, like Rick said, but I think it's not that high at that level that it's going to show up.
Well,
I'm curious.
I think my intention is probably, if it hits 0.2 in a relatively short period of time, I'll just start the radiation. Again, if it doesn't light up, it's probably prudent to get going on it anyway, because it's continuing to rise in a fairly quickly.
Yeah.
That's a personal decision.
So
Yeah.
Neil, I asked Dr. Gainesman why he was jumping in so quickly with me. I was at a 0.2, and he based it on my Gleason score. So a Gleason score of 8. I consider that to be fairly aggressive cancer. So we're going to go ahead and do your radiation. I'm recommending radiation plus ADT, and that's what I did. It was nice.
Mine the score was 7, and I know the cutoff is 8. That a lot of the studies they've been doing is 8 and above, and mine was 7. So I'm pretty close to where you are as well.
Neil, were you 3 plus 4 or 4 plus 3? Do you know?
4 plus 3. I've got it written down here.
I've got it right here too. 3 plus 4.
Oh, I have 4 plus. I have 4 plus.
Yeah, 3 plus 4.
I have 4 plus 3. So I don't know. Check again.
All right, right here. Right here.
Yep.
Okay.
That
All
makes it a
right.
little less scary to wait till 0.2.
Yeah. All right. I'm changing it. I'm changing it right now.
Neil, that's considered favorable intermediate prostate cancer. I wouldn't be worried about it spreading beyond the pelvic region. You don't need to pull the trigger so soon. That's a pretty favorable outlook you have. And of course, you never say never, but it's unlikely that a 3 plus 4 is going to metastasize beyond the pelvic region.
That concurs, I think, with what Carol is saying. But I think one of the other indicators is how fast the PSA is rising, and so a more frequent blood tests will help, I think, me to make that decision.
You've had genetic testing?
I have
I'm
not.
just, oh,
Maybe you should get that done because that could be a factor too.
Yeah, it's very possible. My brother has stage 4 cancer at this point. He missed it completely. His doctor gave him PSA test throughout his life, but he didn't give him any physical tests, and so they missed it. And during the time that I've had cancer, he's contracted cancer, and it's now at stage 4.
David Muslin, you have a comment?
yeah, the comment I was going to say is, to rush into radiation, where are they going to radiate to? And they're just, that's what worries me is because I was hurt by my radiation. And if I could wait a little bit and find the tumor and then hit it with SBRT or whatever, at least you have pinpoint, you're taking care of something pinpoint rather than a wide angle approach to everything. It's just and you could miss it at that point too. So that's what worries me.
Well, yeah, and that was really, I'm not familiar with the procedure and the only radiation, and so the only um, option that I've been told about is full pan pelvic or pelvic girdle radiation, and not looking forward to that. That's for sure.
Well, that would
So
be
what if the tumor
that
isn't
would
in the
make
what if the tumor isn't in the pelvic girdle?
Exactly.
That's that's the problem. So you're lucky with a 3+4, Neil, too. But it's a
Excuse
hard
me,
decision,
guys.
isn't it? It's a hard decision.
All right,
Excuse
guys,
me, guys. This is
Well, I appreciate the
Yeah.
comments and I appreciate the feedback, and I'll let you know how things progress here.
okay. Jack, Dr. Jack, you want to go?
Okay. So after last week, I told you the discrepancy between Sylvester's read on the maximum PSMA scan where they saw no avidity. And so my medical oncologist ran it by the tumor board. The tumor board came back with the following. We will not put it in writing. Interesting politics. We will not put it in writing. However, we recommend that you go ahead and, in view of the discrepancy between our read and Sloan Kettering's read, that you go ahead and get a interventional pulmonologist to do an endobrachial ultrasound guided transbronchial fine needle biopsy. So that's what they recommended. I said, oh, I see. And of course, I read all about it and the possible complications. But I'm waiting for Dr. Carroll, Tom Hope's read. I sent him all my scans, and supposedly he's going to review them all, and then he'll come back with a read and see if it corroborates the findings of Sloan Kettering or not. I'm questioning if it's going to ultimately make a difference or not, because I've got a doubling time that came out of nowhere after 15 years of 5.1 months. So something is going on that's not good, in spite of my having a 3+4 and clean margins, all the other good stuff 15 years ago. So it's a strange disease, and I don't know. Ultimately, I guess I'll submit to this biopsy to see whether it's positive or not, and then deal with it accordingly. But I'm going to see what Dr. Carroll has to say. I'm going to have a telehealth with him next Wednesday, and I'll by then I'll have Hope's findings and see what he has to say, and then some decision will be made when and if to have the biopsy done, and whatever the risks are. Anybody ever have an ultrasound biopsy through the trachea down into the bronchi to the hilar mediastinal lymph nodes? Anybody have anything like that done?
this is John. My friend who has prostate cancer. He has a non-detectable PSA, and he went and got a coronary calcium score where they picked up a lung nodule. It looked a little bit spiky, they decided to look into it a little further, and he took somebody's advice and did get that exact procedure in his lung. He had a first transbronchial biopsy consisting mostly of bronchial brushings, which came back with some mildly abnormal cells. They said it wasn't cancer for sure. And because everybody disagreed on how to read it, he actually had a second procedure where they got a needle biopsy, which is better. And that's looking like they have a little bit more evidence that it's actually cancer in his case. But as far as the procedures themselves, he tolerated them very well and didn't complain at all about that it was hard to go through, and didn't hesitate for a minute to get the second one when they offered it to him.
This was in the parenchyma, not a lymph. For me, it's a lymph node. It's a
For him, it
subcarinal
was
lymph
in the
node.
parenchyma, right?
Yeah. So this is a subcarinal, right in the bifurcation of the bronchi, right beneath that. So I guess they'll go down the trachea and go in guided with an ultrasound and just go ahead and try to go through the bronchi and into the lymph node. And
Yeah.
and they're going to use a small gauge rather than a large gauge. I think 21, 22 usually, rather than anything more. Not go for a core, go for more of a
Fine.
cytologic smear. Yeah. So we'll see.
Well, if he's any indication, you'll tolerate it well.
Yeah. I'm just worried about possible pneumonia infection. You go down there. I mean, my trachea. I mean, how clean can it be? Going down and then cutting through and then coming out. So I worry most about the possibility of a pneumonia or some kind of infection. It could cause a problem. But that's the price you pay for going through these procedures, I guess. So that's my story.
I think Frank Fabish, he was here last time we talked, and he had that procedure, but I cannot remember exactly where the nodule was or the lymph node was that they removed. But he definitely had that procedure.
They removed the lymph node.
No, they biopsied.
Okay, all right.
I think, but he definitely had it, and he's usually with us, or I can, if you want to talk to him directly, Jack, I'm happy to connect you. He's very amenable to talking, but he definitely had it, and we've had other people. I don't see anyone else on here right now, but we've had other folks who have had lung biopsies. I'll have to have a look in my database.
Last week somebody talked about it through the back. Remember, he had it done through the back, through the rib cage, and this is different. This is going down the bronch.
Down, yeah. I'm pretty sure Frank had it through. If not, if it wasn't Frank, we've had people that have done it. But you may be right.
All right.
What I really wanted to ask you, Dr. Jack, and I wanted to mention this to Neil too, is how did you feel about the words that Dr. E had for you last week?
Well, she's terrific. I would love at some point to be able to buy a consultation with her. She's very good. She's very reassuring. But at the same time, what she said, the final thing she said to me was that, you've got cancer. There's no doubt about it, and I'm very interested in your case, and perhaps we can get into it. And that's kind of what I heard at the end. But I think she's terrific, and she's I could certainly see why she's very utilizable and very helpful in every way. So that's how I felt. I really enjoyed the brief contact I had with her.
Did you get any comfort from what she told you?
Yeah, she told me that I'm not imminently about to die, and that's always comforting. And me, I have a tendency I have a tendency to panic over these kind of things, even though I am 83 years old. I know it's old to a lot of people who've had it young, and I feel terrible that that so many of you have suffered at such a young age. But I still, I feel very vital, very alive, and I'm not ready to go yet. But so when something like this comes along in the lung area, and I read it, you hear about visceral metastasis as being, a pretty heavy burden. That's kind of scary, and 20 years ago, I had surgery, and everybody told me it was slow indolent growing. Ultimately, you get a PSMA scan, it'll end up in your pelvis, will give you radiation and hormones, and that's the direction I thought I'd go in. Or pencil beam radiation, very focused right on the pelvic bed or in the prostatic fossa. And to end up in the lung, just freaks me out. So I guess, as my 101-year-old mother used to say, man makes plans and God laughs. And this is so true. She said it in Yiddish,
So excuse me, Jack. And by the way, my mom's almost 101. She'll be 101 on March. But how did you? Was it a PSMA PET scan that gave you the indication in your lungs, or?
Well, the first PSMA scan I had a year ago, April 1st, 2021, showed nodules, lymph nodes, but they didn't light up. So immediately I went to see a pulmonologist, and he did an FDG scan to make sure it wasn't lung cancer, and they ruled that out because there was nothing hypermetabolic going on in any of those nodules. So then the whole process of following up with a iodine scan, and another PSMA scan, axonal scan, total body MRI. I've had so many things. So this was Sloan Kettering's workup, and they still didn't find anything up until this year. For the first time, Sloan Kettering said they see some avidity in the lung lymph node in the subcarinal area and mediastinal area for the first time. The reader at Sloan Kettering called it a 50-50 chance of metastasis. And Dr. E said, well, that's good news. It's 50-50. It's not even documented. It's not definite. And you should be reassured by that because, so I guess you got to hold on to whatever hope you have. And we'll see.
That was a full body MRI that actually showed that in the end?
Well, that's the only MRIs they give you. Yeah, down to the knees.
Yeah. Okay.
These PSMAs are from the top of the head to the knees.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So but it was from a PSMA scan they saw it, or from an MRI?
Well, it was the axonum.
Oh, the axonum. Okay.
Me possibly not being PSMA avid, but she also read in the former PSMA done down at his Sylvester, done April of this year. She read some avidity into the PSMA. Okay, so she read some of that and a little bit of avidity in both for the first time, and Sylvester didn't see any avidity, and they still don't admit to seeing it, but they say, let's do a biopsy. Let's cover your ass and let's do a biopsy. My due diligence, I'm doing the right thing medically. The tumor board's going along with that. I understand as a physician, you got to do that. You can't say, absolutely not, we're not going to. So. Politics.
Well, Peter, I think it's time for your ethical question. Stump the panel.
Okay, so without mentioning names of pharmaceutical companies or drugs or anything, this is a generic question. So I've been battling side effects through the treatment I'm on for about 3 weeks, including nausea, diarrhea, constipation, mostly intestinal stuff. And with the consulting with my oncologist, we decided to skip a cycle. I'm going to go back after the new year on my treatment with Christmas up here and stuff. Anyway, I was having some pretty severe side effects. So I called the drug company up. And as we all know, I mean, drugs are approved for their clinical trials. So the nurses that you get on the line when you talk to when you call the companies up they don't color outside the box there, or outside the lines. They're very rigid about company policy. So, when I asked them about, well, have you ever had anybody with these side effects? And have you had anybody skipping a cycle? Have you had anybody taking the lower dose? They won't talk about that. They say, this is what's prescribed. This is what we do. This is the way to take it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, and I told them what my experience was. And then they start asking me who my doctor is. And I said, well, I'm not going there. I mean, this is between you and me here. I'll give you my information, but I'm not going to give you my doctor's name and stuff. So we left it at that. And then I started getting letters in the mail asking me to tell them who my doctor is, several of them. And I decided I'm not going there. If my doctor knows what I'm doing, and if they want to if they want to report it to the drug company or ask the drug company, they can do it. But I don't feel it's my responsibility to get my doctor involved in the drug company's inquiries. So that's the way I play it. So I don't know if anybody else has a different take on it, but it's kind of none of their business who my doctor is. And if my doctor wants to get involved, it's up to them.
Yeah, Peter, I have a different take on this. I tend to agree with the pharma reps because they don't know your medical history like your doctor does. I think it's perfectly legitimate for them to want to discuss these issues with your doctor, not necessarily with you. They don't know anything about you other than the fact that you're taking the drug. They don't know your medical history, possible complicating factors. So, they can't be practicing medicine on you. They don't know your medical record. I don't know. That's my take anyway.
So
How about
I
the
have,
MDs?
and I have something to throw in, and then I'll be interested to hear from the couple of docs we have here, see what they know. But once you make the drug company aware that you've had side effects, they have an obligation that they have to report that to the FDA. And I don't know what that reporting form looks like because I've never filled it out. But there is an obligation once they are aware of it that they've got to tell the doc, and especially if it is something that's unusual, that isn't common. So, for example, that's what we just went through with these proton pump inhibitors, and we told Myovant that we were aware of 3 situations where somebody had had an adverse response to a proton pump inhibitor, to Orgovyx whilst on a proton pump inhibitor. Now, I don't know what follow-up is required. I just mentioned it to the person we deal with at Myovant, but they're not a medical person. So it's possible that when you call in on that line and you tell those nurses, they have an obligation to pursue it. And I think if it were me, I would. You have 3 different. You have 3 different medical oncologists, isn't that right, Peter? Is
Right.
it 2 or 3?
3, but I'm not talking about side effects here. I'm talking about doctors, and some of my doctors are willing to go off label, skipping a cycle, changing the dosage on something.
Okay.
But the drug companies, they won't talk about that. They
But
will
the
not
thing is, what you call the drug company. And by
Right.
calling the drug company, you opened up a can of worms,
I
right?
know.
Now
I know.
they have to follow up. Now, what I would do is whichever doc it is you think that you might want to give them, I'd call that doc and I'd say, look, I mentioned it. Now they're after me. Is it okay if I tell them?
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up this week. I've got an appointment tomorrow. That's exactly where I'm going. But it's just an interesting situation. I mean, I was just probing to see if they had any experience with what happens when you skip a cycle, because I've done it before. You know, this is not the first time I've skipped a cycle, and they would not acknowledge it's done or even possible, or you know, they just have this party line that they go on.
They have to.
Well, Peter, they have to.
I know they
It's
have.
FDA
I know.
approved.
I know. I get it. I get it. But I don't.
What,
I don't think my
why did
doctor
you call
has time
them,
to
Peter?
fight with them on that.
What did you want to try and find out from them when you called them?
Whether there's any disadvantage to a skipping cycle or advantage to it. Is it?
They're
Is
not
it?
going to tell you.
They can't
Peter,
tell you. They
the
won't tell
FDA,
you.
I
yeah,
get. I
the
learned
FDA
that.
won't allow them to do that. You have to, they are not allowed to, a drug manufacturer is not allowed to talk about off-label use. Um, Only the doctor can provide off-label prescriptions.
Hmm.
I
So
get
they'd
it.
be violating FDA protocol if they talk to you about off-label uses of their drug. They can't do
Okay.
it.
But I didn't know whether I'd get the doctor in trouble by mentioning the doctor's name. I didn't want to go there, and that's
No,
kind
you
of the.
won't get the doctor in trouble because that's their prerogative as a physician to practice medicine according to their best judgment, right? They can do that. I mean, yes, you skip a dose, you delay if you have a side effect, it's all done, right? I mean, all these things are normally done, but again, it's not the drug company making that decision, it's your personal physician.
Okay.
Peter, you posed this as an ethical question, and I'm not a doctor, I'm a recovering attorney. And I think Rick is right on. You pass the doctor, tell them they want to talk to him, but you leave it up to him. You don't give the drug company the name. It's up his choice whether he wants to talk to him.
Okay.
Mhm.
Got it. That's
Yeah.
enough. That answers the question. Let's not prolong it, but good. I just want to bring it up.
What are the politics though? It's a good question though. What are the politics for the doctor when, big pharma starts coming after him about, going off label?
They don't have
Well,
They
time.
don't.
They're
the
pressed to
doctor
the
can
wall dealing
the
with
doctor
patients.
can just. Oh, sorry, Peter.
They're pressed to the wall dealing with patients. They don't have time to deal with this business with the drug companies. I don't think anyway. My doctor does.
Let's
No,
hear
and
from
you
one of
know,
the doctors.
secretly, they're happy if they go off label, right? Because they're using the drug.
Yes.
Right. Hold on a minute, Herb. Let's hear from one of the MDs in the room. Go ahead, John.
Go.
Oh, okay. Then you talk, Jack, and see what your opinion is. But
All right.
in my opinion, Peter, you have no legal and probably not even any ethical obligation to tell the drug company who the doctor is. I also think it's a great idea to talk it over with the doctor and ask their opinion. The doctor, we have these forms that we can fill out and report adverse effects, and your doctor can take the information you give him and report the adverse effects. It's also, I just want to remind everybody that it's perfectly legal for the doctor to modify doses and prescribe drugs off label. So if I were you, I would probably not talk to the company and I probably would talk to the doctor. Jack?
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. The thing about going off label, I went off label many times in my practice. The only concern about going off label is if you damage somebody. And if you damage somebody by going off label, then you're putting yourself at risk, the patient at risk. And then if you start talking to the drug company about this doctor because you're sort of annoyed at him for doing something like that, then you could create a problem. But obviously, you have no damages. Nothing happened to you as a result of somebody doing something with you off label. But you seem more concerned about not letting the doctor know that you've spoken to the people of the drug company. I just wonder if you're feeling a little uncomfortable with the fact that you were speaking to this guy without talking to him first.
Oh, I just feel uncomfortable getting the doctor involved. They've got enough to do. That's something I
You don't have to.
But you want to get him involved. That's what everybody's saying. And I agree. I'd want to communicate with you if you had a concern about any medication that I was giving you, rather than you talk about it with the drug manufacturer. So I think it's important for you to communicate with the doctor directly and ask him about any concerns you have about, medications that's not being given you, exactly the way it's prescribed. So I agree with Rick and Len and everybody else is saying, talk to the doctor. You can leave them. You don't even have to ever talk to them again. You have no responsibility to the drug company.
Peter, are they managing your side effects with any other meds?
Yeah, I've got other things. I'm doing okay now. It's just
okay.
Again, it's not the side effects that were concerning me. It was more, is there any detrimental thing about skipping doses and so forth, or using a lower dose? And the drug company doesn't want to address that. That's okay. It's fine.
You're second guessing your doctor.
No,
right?
I went through it with the doctor, and I, agreed that we would skip a dose several different times. And another doctor I have suggested lowering doses and stuff. So I know that I've got agreement in those parameters if they decide to do that. But the drug company doesn't know anything about that, or doesn't want to deal with that, or doesn't have any information about that, doesn't want to talk about that. But that's okay. I get it.
It's tricky, because they could be setting up a situation for you to use them to testify against your doctor, and they don't know that. So if they hear you talking like this, they don't know whether or not you're about to do something medical legally that could represent a problem for your doctor. They don't want to get involved in that.
We better move on before I put my foot in my mouth.
Yeah.
This is not one of our sponsors, thank God.
Peter, I think this is the last ethical question you're going to pose to this group.
Yeah. Hey, Peter.
Okay. Since I think I've addressed everyone who said they wanted to speak tonight, but if I didn't, raise your hand, please.
Len, I wanted to give a quick update.
Go ahead. Yeah, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to give a shout out to Ben Nathanson, because he went through Dr. E's. I said that I didn't have enough knowledge to understand what the hell she was saying. And he went through her whole presentation with me and really increased my knowledge of a lot of things, gave me a couple of references. So Ben, thank you. I very much appreciated our meeting. That was great to take that time out. I talked to Dr. Gainesman about being on the ADT only for 6 months. And he told me that for salvage radiation, that 6 months was the appropriate time to do it. So that was his, take on. I said, if you were doing radiation treatment, initial treatment with radiation and ADT, then we'd be talking 18 months to 2 years, but that's not what you're doing. And then he said to me, and by the way, we're going for a cure here, Alan. And I said, well, that's very nice, Dr. Gainesman. I'm not betting on it. I believe this is a chronic disease. And so, that's the way I'm looking at it. And also the medical oncologist, the radiation oncologist also said, we gave you a high dose of radiation. We're really hoping to knock this thing out. So, but, I find the doctors a little over optimistic. And so I'm trying to be realistic. That's it.
Jim Kubat had a question about insurance, the follow-up question.
All right, thanks again for the second opportunity to talk. Very quickly, and there's a long backstory to all of this, so I'm not going to go into all of that. But I'm in a situation now where in the next 3 days, I need to decide between the Medigap coverage as a supplement to Medicare. I have Part A and Part B already, or Advantage. And just this week, last week, I went into a deeper dive into all of the options, and it's actually more complicated than I had been advised it was for the last 12 months. So my question is, very briefly, to all of you, in your experience, for those of you who have Medicare, for someone who's had past prostate cancer, there's no evidence of disease now for since my radiation. So my radiation oncologist used the term cancer-free. I don't know if anyone ever is cancer-free at any point once they have it, but that's beside the point. Can anyone speak about any general recommendation, the Medigap side and the supplement, or choose an Advantage provider? I'm in the state of Massachusetts, and I already have an RX plan from my employer, who I'm leaving in a few days. So the RX plan is set. I don't need that from either side, but that extra 20%, the Medigap, after Part B pays what they will pay. Anyone, because I've been told both sides, Advantage is good, then supplement, I'll go with that. Any viewpoints from any of you on that? If you're,
Hey, Rick, this could be a chance for you to do another show of hands.
Well,
How
first
many
of
of
all,
us are on Advantage and how
okay,
many of
hold
us
on a
are on?
minute, because we have to make a note that Cliff and Jim have their hands up. They want to speak. So take your hands down for the minute. We know you want to say something. Take your hands down, and then we can have and did Norm Pollock also want to speak? I think Norm Pollock maybe.
I
Yeah.
think he had
So
his hand up.
those are the three guys who maybe wanted to say something. So we can ask everybody right now. First of all, show of hands of the who here is not on Medicare. Is there anybody not on Medicare right now? So Jim and Cliff and Jeff Wood are not on Medicare. Oh, and Bob G. Okay.
Let me clarify that, Rick. Let me clarify that.
No. We don't. I don't have time. We don't have time, Jim. Can't get into it for the second. Take your hand down right now. Of those of you on Medicare, who has an Advantage plan?
Oh.
Those of you who are on Medicare, who has an Advantage plan? I need to put my hand up here. Wait a minute. Where do I put it? Here. Okay. So how many people are we seeing right now? So 1, 2, 3,
Five.
so 5. So
Yeah.
five or six. So that gives you an idea, Jim, that everybody else except the people who don't have Medicare, everybody else has the supplement. Now, the big issue with the Advantage plan is who do your doctors cover? If your Advantage plan covers the Yale Medical Facility where you're currently getting treatment, or if it covers Dana-Farber, that's what you've got to check up front. Or look at the Advantage plan and find out what your maximum out of pocket is if you go out of network. So in my case, I think last year or this year, it's around $8,000. And then the Advantage covers everything. So the maximum I can be out of pocket is $8,000. And then I compare that to what a Plan G would cost me, plus the drug coverage, and that's my exposure. So it becomes a financial issue. You can get a Plan G and a Plan D,
and you can go anywhere in the country that you want, and they'll cover everything, and you don't have any exposure, but you're going to be paying whatever your rates are and where you live because it changes from state to state. So you have to look at it state by state, and you compare that to what your maximum exposure is if you wanted to go out of network, if you needed to. And if you've got docs who are in your network, you're home and dry. So that's my 2 cents. I'll throw it open.
I've got the Medicare Advantage, Blue Cross Blue Shield in Tennessee. We've got the lowest plan. We don't pay any copay other than what comes out of the Social Security. My wife had her DBS. It was $92,000 was the bill. Other than the MRIs she had to have, the 2 MRIs, we paid $225 for 2 operations in the $92,000. Same with my prostatectomy, $225 or $300 maybe it was at the time, and then your doctor's visits for $35. And you were saying that, yeah, they talk about the total out of pocket, but we've never even come close to the total out of pocket. Even with, like I say, a $92,000 surgery, we only had $300 out of pocket. So I'm not sure where they really get you out of pocket other than you go, out of network. But the network's big. I mean, it picked up Dr. E down in Houston from Tennessee. It picks up another doc out in Washington State, and all my docs here. So
It picked up Dr. E in Houston.
Yep.
As in network.
Yep.
Wow.
And I see a naturopathic oncologist in Seattle, and she's picked up too. So all those are only $35.
So Jim, what you can do is you can check with the Advantage plan that you're considering, and see if your doctors are covered in that. And if they're covered, you're home and dry.
Yeah, it's been beautiful for us. I mean, we pay almost nothing and everything. And the MRIs they're approved within a week. You don't even have to wait on that very long. And so it's been good to us. I don't know.
No, that's great. Yeah, I know that the in-network, out-of-network issue is definitely one that's on my radar screen, and I can check that. But that's that's great feedback.
You just look at the plan you want, and then just put in the doctor's names, and it tells you. You don't even have to really do much. It's pretty simple. If you go on to Medicare.gov and look for Advantage plans, and it just asks you what docs and what drugs, and you're pretty much done.
Is there a way of? I guess you have to look at it doctor by doctor, right? Like depending on of my
right.
bump.
Yeah, you have to put in each doc's name, and then it'll tell you if they're covered or not.
Yeah. Okay.
From my point of view, I don't want anybody choosing my doctors, and I also have to live part-time in Arizona and part-time in Connecticut. So for me, the vote is for traditional Medicare and a gap plan.
I just say my wife's a geriatric nurse, and I'm retiring at the end of this year. And I said, "Whoa! I saw these things on TV about the Advantage plan." And she said, "Yeah, forget it. That's not what you're getting." So, traditional it is. Of course, I also have retired teachers HOPS, the Health Options Plan, which is a really good plan that's not outrageously expensive. So that helps.
Did your wife have any specific reasons why she felt so strongly about that?
I think people at the nursing home don't get to go to the doctors. They have to jump around, and it was so hard to find doctors that were in the networks.
I see. Yeah.
I can ask her and report back next week.
Yeah, I had a meeting with what they call a Shine representative here in Massachusetts, and she she didn't really want to go on record as recommending one over the other, but she was definitely steering me away from the Advantage plans. So it's just yeah, it's complicated. Um, yeah. Any other thoughts on that? I appreciate the time.
I
Well,
think
yeah,
that
I mean,
the Medicare Advantage is basically an HMO where you have to really go within network. You don't have your choice of docs.
Yeah.
And I think that's for if you have a serious disease, that could be a major problem. I mean, for most people, without it, it may not be a problem if you're garden variety disease. But I think if you seriously need help, you want to be able to go to the best doc you can.
Yeah.
And what about if it's an emergency? You're on vacation. They take you somewhere to be treated. It's
oh
not
yeah,
network. You're going to
that's
get covered.
allowed for. That's taken care of in an Advantage plan.
Oh,
That
really? Okay.
there are allowances if it's an emergency, if you're out of state. There are things that it is accounted for in the plan. But like I say, Jim, I think step one is if you find it, find out if your docs are covered. If you've got an Advantage plan that covers you at Yale, which is where most of your docs are right now, that you may feel comfortable with that, and then you'll take the risk if something happens more than that and you want to go out. If you're not happy with that, or you can't find a plan that covers you at Yale, then you're going to need a Medigap plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Jim, from what you were talking about earlier, that I mean, you're dealing with kidney stuff and going into the new year, and you might have to find a specialist for that and shop around. So, give yourself a lot of latitude for this one. Make sure you
Yeah.
have opportunities to find the right doc, because this is your life going forward.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. All right. Thanks very much. I see we're almost out of time. Appreciate it, everybody.
Yeah. Jim, I was just looking up, what is it? MedPage Today did a story December 10 titled, Should Doctors Warn Patients About the Downsides of Medicare Advantage Plans? So you might want to take a look at that.
And actually, there was an op-ed piece by Zeke Emanuel today in the paper about how bad about Medicare Advantage, the negativity of there.
Huh. Interesting.
Okay. Cliff, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I wanted to go back about the turkey tail mushroom. So the research, I was taking it for a short time, but I was also researching as well. And what I found out, the reason why I stopped was there was efficacy for the breast cancer, lung cancer, gastric cancer, pancreatic cancer, and liver cancer. They said they've been using it for several years. There was no mention of prostate cancer. Therefore, I just said, I don't think I should be taking this any longer, and I didn't. That's all I wanted to mention about that.
Okay, thank you. And Julian, we're running out of time here. You had your hand up, Rick tells me.
No.
No?
No, I'm
Oh,
good. I'm good. Thank you.
okay.
Jim Marshall had his hand up. Go ahead, Jim. We have time. We have time. So.
Right now, anyway, I pass. Okay, it was about the Part C Medicare Advantage, but that's okay. Okay, everybody's said things about it.
Okay.
Just one quick one. When Len was saying you got to watch when you get out of town, this was before I was on the Medicare Advantage. I had some chest pain and went to the hospital down in Phoenix, and we were visiting my in-laws, and they said, we're going to keep you overnight. Okay, fine. Well, I didn't realize they were keeping me in observation, so I wasn't admitted. So the insurance didn't pick it up. Cost me $8,000 out of pocket. So
Whoa.
just, yeah. Well, that was the same year my wife had we had $44,000 in healthcare expenses that year. But anyhow, make sure you ask when they say they're going to keep you. Say, are you going to put me in observation or are you going to admit me? Because they're all admitted, it's covered. Observation, it's not. And it's
And there's always
expensive.
something about staying 3 days. I can't remember what my wife said about that, but she tells the hospitals keep them 3 days. Something with Medicare.
No, they just have to admit you. It has to be a formal admit as opposed to an observation.
Right.
I was in an observation room with a bunch of other people and nobody looked in on me, but it cost me $8,000.
Yeah.
Wow. Don't do it. Tell them, send me home or admit me.
Anybody else have a hand? Anybody else before we sign off, want to say anything? Anything?
Happy New Year.
Well,
Happy
that's a
New
good
Year.
thing to
Happy New
say.
Year.
Happy New
Yeah,
Year.
okay. I knew. Don't forget, we've got, wait a minute. David Muslin's still here. He's my fundraising chair. David Muslin, you can make the pitch. Go on.
Well, first of all, I'm grateful to be part of this group. I'm grateful for everybody's openness and willing to share. It's all good for all of us. And I too feel that I've made some very close friends here, and it's just very comforting to have all of you guys in my life, and it's important that we support AnCan for the future, because in 30 years from now, 40 years from now, when we're long gone, wouldn't it be great for this to live on for everybody younger than us? And that's what we want to do. We really want to help support AnCan and build a sustaining organization. So thank you guys, and love all of you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Dave.
And thank you, everybody. There are some people in this group who have made some tremendous donations, and thank you so much. And we really, really appreciate it. And we're gonna keep trucking on. We're gonna definitely. There will be no diminishing of our prostate cancer programming, and we're really hopeful that we can expand to some other key disease areas next year. We'd love to do it. We just know that each one of these groups, we have an MS group coming into this room in 25 minutes, and we make a huge impact on their life, and we know it, and it's very rewarding to hear that. So we're not just about prostate cancer. We don't have too much room left to expand our prostate cancer. We've wrestled as to how can we get this room smaller. The mods have talked about it, and we know there's a lot of people, but as I assured Neil earlier on today, we try and get to everybody every meeting, and if we don't, occasionally we have to throw people over to next week, but we don't know how to make the meeting smaller, because we figure that if we split it up, many of you would still want to come because you don't want to miss anything. So you don't want to, we may talk about something that was important to you in the meeting you weren't there, and then, so I don't know. I don't know what the I don't know. We don't know. But right now it seems to work. And a group like this, it was a perfect size today, around 30. And we talked some great stuff today, and everybody had time, and we didn't have any new people. So there you go. We didn't have any new people, but we had a few golden oldies that we haven't seen for. So that was great.
And,
Okay,
hey, Rick,
guys.
to
Good
keep
night, all.
AnCan going for
All right,
30
stop the
years.
recording.
Happy New Year,
Talk to
everybody.
you next year.
Happy New Year.
Then you